All right, so today we're going to continue our series on how to play the real book, Christmas edition, with Christmas Time is Here. We're going to go through some of the techniques we use to interpret what's in the real book, and we're going to kind of go over stuff in a way where we're assuming you watched some of our other videos. So definitely check some of those out, especially our Someday My Prince Will Come video, if you want to have a better understanding of some of the stuff we're talking about today. But let's dive into Christmas Time is Here. All right, so just like with the other songs and arrangements we've done, we start with a basic default setting of what our baseline is when we're reading the real book or a lead sheet in general. And then we have our 10 enhancements that you're gonna see us pepper throughout the arrangement down here. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the first phrase of the song here and see what we got. So actually a couple phrases there. So let's go back and break down what we saw, what we used here. So we're starting off in that first measure with an open voicing on the left hand. And like we've talked about a lot, this open voicing is a great thing to have in your arsenal, especially as it relates to left hand voicings, because it kind of makes you immune, like we've said before, to that low octave limit. Certain intervals just don't sound good in the left hand's neighborhood of the keyboard. What always will sound good are fifths and octaves and stuff bigger than that. And that's what this open voicing affords us, is the opportunity to kind of play it wherever we want. So you see that right off the bat in measure one. On the third beat of measure one, we've introduced two things with this chord right here. This rootless voicing with the introduction of tension 9. Still on the F major 7, just kind of changing up the voicing of the chord and introducing a tension. We have a whole series on rootless voicings, shameless plug, so check that out if you want to learn more about those. They really do offer a really cool sound to your playing, so you should be using them if you're not already. And tension 9, always a great tension, safe to add. 99 times out of 100, you're never going to have an issue with tension 9 being added to the chord. In our next measure on this E flat 7 sharp 11, we have a simple root plus one guide tone voicing on the left hand. The guide tones, again, being the third and the seventh of your chords. So here we have the root and the seventh. That's our guide tone. And then over here, later on in the measure, well, throughout the entire measure, really, you have this layer effect that we've talked about before, where you see the keyboard kind of from the perspective of a set player. In the third measure, we're harmonizing melody with chord tones from F major 7. It's always a safe bet if you want to harmonize your melody. Just grab a chord tone or two and you're good to go. Let's keep going here with our arrangement though here. All right, so measure 5 is our root and guide tone on the left hand once again down here. But this is where you're gonna see this throughout the arrangement, where we sort of play with this notion of even eighth notes versus uneven eighth notes. And we have like two sort of interpretations of uneven eighth notes, or a shuffle as we would probably normally refer it to. Right, so the eighth notes in measure 5, they're not quite even eighth notes. They're kind of like sticky, right? But they're not really a shuffle either. The shuffle we have going on in measure 6 is a closer, sort of more true interpretation of a shuffle. So again, these four perspectives of how to play the eighth notes throughout the piece. The even eighth notes, the slightly late eighth notes, the legit 2-to-1 shuffle, and then like the slightly late version of that. And then like little iterations of those four too, but I don't want to get too much into the weeds with that. Just kind of use that. And by the way, this really kind of works for this piece because it's a ballad. And so we have that kind of space and time to play with it. This isn't something you can kind of just always do with the eighth notes. So let's keep going here. We talked about the different ways we're shuffling the eighth notes here. You see that sort of indicated in the music notation. At the end, you see here like a really legit even use of the eighth notes down here. On the right hand, Our first instance of an upper structure. Upper structure triads, chordals, and pentatonics are a great way to introduce these great jazzy colors to your voicings here. So what we have is a C chord over an F major 7, highlighting the major 7 and the tension 9 of this chord. So yeah, there's that upper structure voicing we talked about again on the downbeat of measure 9, that C chord on top of F major 7. In our next measure, we have another upper structure used here, this D flat augmented on top of E flat 7. Again, creating this cool separate sort of entity sound and color and texture to the chord voicing while highlighting some of the tensions. In our next bar, we have this shuffle feel kind of featured heavily on the right hand, but also our first instance of a rhythmic variation. You can see in the original, this whole time we've had like the original melody up here on top in case you haven't noticed. So you can kind of compare and contrast. We do these with all the arrangements, by the way. You can compare and contrast in real time what changes we're making and where we're making them as it relates to the harmony and the melody. And here you can clearly see how we've shifted the melody later in the measure, and as a result of that had to implement a rhythmic variation in order to kind of squeeze in the melodic idea into the fewer beats that we created. Why don't we just take a quick listen to that so you can hear exactly what it is I'm talking about. Right, so instead of dee da da bum bum, we have this hesitation to that melodic idea while swinging those notes pretty hard there. That embellishment into the next line would sound like this. All right, so here we are in measure 13. There's another rhythmic variation in the melody. And our first instance here of a, well, this is another embellishment, but our first instance of a tilde. You play the given note, you go up to the next note in the key, back to the given note, down to the next note in the key, and then back to the given note. This flat sign above the tilde is just telling you to flatten that above note that we talked about. So listen to that again real quick. Embellishment. There's that tilde. And now we have a melodic variation on measure 14, right? What's going on here at the end of this measure is just an arpeggio of A flat minor 7. Right? You know what I'm talking about? That A flat minor 7, it's just an arpeggio. Right? But in this context, and it being a chromatic sort of, I don't know, passing chord or stepping stone between these two guys here, make it sound really cool. So at the end of this phrase here, we just have a B flat over C, as in the original arrangement, and then our upper structure C over F major 7 one more time. Go ahead and listen to the end of this phrase here, and then talk about the next one. Here in measure 18, we have this G flat 7 with a rootless voicing again on the left hand, tensions 9 and 13 in that voicing, and the sharp 11 is in the melody. What's going on at the end of that measure down here in the left hand is just a means of like filling in the space. There was nothing going on here. So we just took the fifth and the root of the chord, broke them apart, created a cool little moment on the left hand there. There's this glissando in the next measure combined with this upper structure, right? We have an A flat add 9 on top of the G flat 7 chord that's in the arrangement, and kind of breaking the chord very quickly to create that roll effect, that glissando effect into these even eighth notes. Let's check out that line one more time real quick and we'll listen to the next one. yeah, we're just kind of having these three notes approach our melody. So after that D7, on the third beat, there's a D7 flat 9. But you'll notice we're using the sharp 9 in the voicing, and that's because, like we've talked about before, the flat 9 and the sharp 9 are interchangeable tensions. It's such like a truism, I guess, that we didn't even bother reflecting that reharm like in the arrangement, because it's so, those two notes are so interchangeable, it almost doesn't matter whether you say flat 9 or sharp 9. So just know that you can always swap out a flat 9 for a sharp 9 and vice versa. In the next measure, we have another use of grace notes leading us into our melody note of B flat. Again with this shuffle feel question mark designation. So I believe this one was like a slightly late interpretation of the shuffle feel. Let's listen to that real quick. Right? It's kind of like a lazier shuffle than normal. That G is just like a hair after where you would expect it to be if you were like playing a 2-to-1 ratio against a metronome. I also want you to notice, it's also not in the arrangement, the use of dynamics here, how much terrace dynamics were here, were present, right? These first two bars, in your face, epic loud, and then the reiteration of the idea in the last two bars is just backed off on and really quiet and subtle. Don't forget about the dynamics when you're playing your arrangements or interpreting your real sheet. Beautiful arpeggio at the end with our upper structure, but let's go back to measure 29 first, because that's where this phrase sort of begins. So here you can kind of see like the arrangement is abandoning the melody somewhat, right? And it's done so by leaning into chord tones a lot, right? And that whole sequence we just went through, culminating here in this last measure with this B flat over C, which is just kind of a different way, the 5 chord of the key. It's kind of a different way of just notating a 5/7 sus4. You get all the essence of a 5/7 sus4 when you put the 4 chord on top of the root of the 5th of the key, if that makes any sense. It does to me. And in the last measure, we have our handy dandy arpeggio to end any sort of song, especially a ballad. While we've been pedaling this whole time, by the way, you're going to hear that continue throughout this little outro here. Again, featuring our upper structure triad, the 5 major triad over 1 upper structure, highlighting the 9th and major 7th of the voicing. So let's rewind back to the beginning of the song, take a listen to that ending in the context of the whole song, as well as all the other stuff we talked about. If you'd like to have access to this PDF or this arrangement or any of our other awesome arrangements, go ahead and become a member. All of our members have free access to all of this content, as well as all sorts of other awesome music stuff. So click on the join button down below or the PDF if you want to subscribe and become a member today. I'd actually like to take a second and thank all you guys who did decide to join and become members, because it's people like you that make videos like this and all the content that we do and arrangements like this possible. So thank you, greatly appreciated. Let's go ahead and listen to the arrangement one more time, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Thanks for sticking around through the whole video. YouTube seems to think you're gonna like one of these 2 videos here. So why don't you hang around and catch some more of our content. Don't forget to check us out on mdex.com also. Catch you next time.